Okay, cool. So last video we went over why you might be experiencing hip shift when you squat. So now we're going to go over very simple ways to fix it. So one of the easiest ways to fix it is first to actually learn how to shift your hip side to side. So this is one that I really like from Pat Davidson. And this is just to learn the warm-up drill, right? So first off, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to put your feet so they're basically facing forwards like this. This is going to help the internal rotation part of it. So as you can see, I'm trying to do it so I'm level with you guys on my toes pointing forwards. All you're literally going to do is I'm going to try to get you to push and make one foot as heavy as possible and one foot as light as possible, but without letting the foot leave the floor. And as you go over to one side and you make one foot really heavy, you can literally start to bend that knee a little bit, as long as you kind of just keep on making the foot as heavy as you can on this side, making this foot lighter. And one way you can make the foot lighter is feel like you're almost pushing off of it. And all I want you to do with that is imagine like your nose, or like your chin, your sternum, your belly button and your hip have to stay on one line. So as you move over, even if you were to bend forwards a little bit, you end up kind of in this centered line. And as you can see here, what I'm having to do is I'm having to find internal rotation in my hip to stop myself from falling over. This is the first easy one. The next one you're going to do is you're going to go over and you're going to start hinging a little bit. So you might need to bend a little bit further over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slump a little bit. I'm going to hollow my body out like this, boom, like that. So I'm going to tuck under like I'm doing a hollow hold. Then as I shift, I'm just going to very lightly hinge downwards. So I'm going to shift across, make the weight heavy. Then I'm just going to hinge a little bit. And I'm going to show you how much I'm hinging by. So all this is to do is to allow me to get a little bit further over and to be able to experience that hip rotation a little bit more. Because when we're squatting, what's happening is we're not reaching internal rotation during hip flexion very well to load up the glutes. So what we're going to do, instead of just shifting side to side nice and upright, I'm going to go here, I'm going to slump a bit, I'm going to shift over and make one of my feet really heavy, and then I'm just going to hinge back. Same thing for this side, hinge over and hinge back. And what you can then start doing is just reaching towards that foot, hinge over, reach towards that foot, and all I'm trying to do is shift the weight over to one foot and make it as heavy as possible, and then reach down towards the toes, hinge over, reach down towards the toes, reach over, reach down towards the toes. And all this is doing again, it's just causing that compression and it's really making me rotate into it. So each of these exercises, like this one, the leaning, you can just do as much or as little as you want, but the actual shifting and the hinging, you want to do these for really fairly slow tempo, really just focus on making that shift. And look what I'm doing, I'm making this leg, this foot really heavy, and I'm getting all of my weight centered over it. I'm making sure I'm really reaching internal rotation as I'm hinging. And then I'm going through. You want to do this for like 10 reps per side. You can actually start to, let's say, so I don't have a weight, so I'm just going to pretend my shoes are dumbbell. But as I go down, I could do, let's say, 10 reps on the left side. As I go to hinge over and I go to really make this foot heavy and hinge over and internally rotate over that foot, I reach down towards the toes here. And you can just use like a 5 or 10 kilo dumbbell for that, or you can go heavier. But that, just that little hinge, that reach and making the foot heavy will really help that internal rotation. Then the last one, which you can do, which is going to help a lot, is just doing a split squat, front foot elevated, where you really focus on lining up. So a normal split squat, there's 2 rules that I want to change for this one. One is your hips have to travel like they're stuck in an elevator. So you can't do this. They can't move from high and back to low and forwards like this. They also can't go from here and they can't travel backwards. What you need them to do is you need them to travel straight up and down. So if you look at the line they're in, they're kind of in line with the door frame there. My hips are just going to travel straight down, straight up again, straight down, straight up again. That's it. That's the only rule for that. The next one is you can't do it with an open hip like this. So can you kind of see how my hips are open, like they're kind of just this way? You need to get as much weight through your front leg as you can. So again, I'm going to try and make my front foot as heavy as possible without my back foot coming off the floor. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to try and rotate across that leg. So once I've gone as far forward as I can, watch where my hips, my sternum are going. I'm going to turn them in to try and face over this foot. So everything is trying to go over the center or the inside edge of this foot, then elevator mode. Keeping this leg, this foot as heavy as possible. Now if you look again as I go down, what's happening? Everything's staying lined up and staying internally rotated. And then I'll just do it from the side. I'm going to go here. We'll do that same thing. I'm going to set up, I'm really going to try and push as much weight through my front leg as possible to make it heavy without my back foot needing to come off the floor. Then what I'm going to do, I take my sternum, my hips, I'm going to twist them in and center them so they're over the middle of my foot here. And then up and down, keeping this front leg as heavy as possible. And what that does is, again, emphasizes the internal rotation, but it does it in a squat pattern so that you can get your quad and your glute to work together in that line. So now, when you go to squat, you'll stop experiencing that hip shift as much, or you'll understand how to control it now, so it won't feel like it's just happening. You'll feel like you can actually stop it. Also for these drills, anywhere from 1 to 3 sets, like 10 to 20 reps on each. The reps you do is going to depend on what level of drill you're doing, because obviously the first one, the hip shift, is very simple, it's not very taxing. As you go through and you start split squatting, we're actually doing like that lateral hinge like this. You can add more weight to it, so obviously those you're not going to want to do a lot of weight. How many sets and reps you do depends on how bad the problem is. If you really struggle with the feeling of it, more sets, you can do beyond 3. If it's not a big problem, you're just trying to stay on top of it, do like 1 or 2 sets, and that should be enough.